Episode 5 of the Mythic Pod, Why Game Pass is Such a Big Deal. Hello everyone and welcome back to Episode 5 of the Mythic Pod here on Mythic United. I'm your host Tony, and today we're going to talk about the Xbox Game Pass program and the recent upgrades and improvements to it, and why I think it's such a big deal. So I've talked about this a little bit in past podcasts, but I think I'm going to go over the official press release with you guys right now just so you get a full scope of what's happening. Today, we're excited to announce plans for a major expansion to Xbox Game Pass that underscores our commitment to deliver our fans the ultimate gaming subscription service. Moving forward, we plan to release all new Xbox One exclusive games from Microsoft Studios into Xbox Game Pass on the same date as their global release. This means that when Sea of Thieves launches on March 20th, it will be included in the Xbox Game Pass to all members. This plan to bring new games timed with their global release into Xbox Game Pass not only includes announced titles like Sea of Thieves, State of Decay 2, and Crackdown 3, but future unannounced games from Microsoft Studios, including new iterations of our biggest Xbox One exclusive franchises such as Halo, Forza, and Gears of War on the same day they launch. So let's look into that for a second. This is a big statement. This is Xbox saying, hey, every major first-party exclusive that we're going to release is going to launch the same day on Xbox Game Pass, and if you're subscribed to that, then you don't need to go out and buy the game. And we'll get into the economics of that in a second. What I thought was interesting, I want to go over a couple of the notes here in terms of like the benefits of the program. So a couple things to note here is that you don't own the game. You never do. You're just subscribed to the service that gets you access to it. So if you're somebody who likes to own their games, this might not be for you, but we'll get into that in a little bit because this program also has a solution for that. You also have no idea how long the game's going to stay on the program. Games kind of slide in and out of the program, and from what I've seen, some like the big games like Halo 5, they've stayed on the program the entire time. But in theory, a game like Sea of Thieves, which comes out on March 20th, they could take it off of Xbox Game Pass, 3 months after it comes out, if they really wanted to. I doubt they would do that, but technically, yeah, the game could disappear at any time. And once the game disappears, will it ever come back onto the program? And again, that's another consideration. So, again, using the Sea of Thieves example, say 6 months after release, Sea of Thieves is not part of Xbox Game Pass anymore, and you wanna play it. You want to subscribe to Xbox Game Pass, or you are subscribed to it already, and you're hoping it comes back. Will it ever come back? Hard to say. Another good feature about this, and this helps a lot of PC gamers out there, or people who have both like myself, if the game is Xbox Play Anywhere, as long as you have that game, whether it's Xbox Game Pass, whether you actually bought it digitally, you can play it on PC no problem. So this is kind of a big deal for PC gamers, especially if Xbox really starts to ramp up their exclusive library, and kind of starting with Sea of Thieves. If you subscribe to Xbox Game Pass, any game that's Xbox Play Anywhere on the Xbox Game Pass program, you can play on your PC without actually having to shell out the money for it. So I think that's pretty great. Now, something I thought was interesting was that a former BioShock developer from Irrational Games, he spoke about Xbox Game Pass as well as just the state of the industry in general, in an article written by IGN. And I think it's interesting what he had to say about this. And I'll kind of respond to it right now, but I'm going to read it to you first. There are simply too many games, too many steep discounts, too much hardware that isn't dropping in price like it normally does. Too many free games, too many re-releases, too many things telling people to not buy games. Mind you, I love all of these things. However, that doesn't skirt the fact that the industry is conditioning the audience that they are idiots if they buy the game when it comes out. Where does this lead us? I think this is really interesting, especially the last line where he says the industry is conditioning the audience that they are idiots if they buy a game when it comes out. And mind you, this statement just isn't in response to Xbox Game Pass. This is also in response to what he saw this holiday season where games were just heavily discounted a couple weeks after release. Games like Wolfenstein 2, for example, I know it was basically half price 2 weeks after it launched. Even games like Star Wars Battlefront 2, which sold 9 million copies, was close to half price a couple weeks after it launched as well. Games like Call of Duty even, a couple weeks after it launched, heavily discounted on Black Friday. What he's seeing here is that, hey, the hardware isn't dropping in price, but these games, they're basically giving them away for free, and it's awesome for the gamer because you can buy more games, but as a developer, he's like, I don't exactly know where this goes, and especially with Xbox Game Pass, where a lot of people are going to subscribe to this and just stop buying games in general, and they're just going to pay their monthly fee. And he doesn't exactly know where that leads him. And to be fair, he might not know about the economics of Xbox Game Pass. Perhaps it's a very economically sound program that, hey, if your game's on this and people are playing it, like, you don't need to worry about people physically buying your game. You're going to get a decent amount of money. And we'll get into that in a second. I want to go over what my thoughts are on the economics of it. But let's get into why this is a big deal and why I think it's a big deal for gamers. I think it's a big deal for developers and for publishers. And we're going to jump into all three groups here. And let's go into topic number one. If you can't afford to buy every big exclusive every year, you can subscribe to this. And this one speaks to me a lot. And I'm going to talk in Canadian dollars here just to help out anyone who's American. You know your game prices, and just know that Xbox Game Pass is $10 a month in America, but in Canada it's $11.99, so $12 a month, $144 a year to subscribe to Xbox Game Pass. New games in Canada are $79.99 or more at this point, so $80. So for the cost of less than 2 brand new games, you get all of them. And you don't get any guarantee of third-party games on here, but if you're someone like me who does enjoy dabbling in the exclusives, somebody who, like myself, who is definitely going to buy Sea of Thieves, who's definitely going to buy Crackdown 3 and was thinking about State of Decay 2, somebody who would love to play the Forza series every year but might not spend the money on it, that works well for me, and somebody who's always going to play the next Gears of War, the next Halo, and would always like to try new Xbox One exclusives like Quantum Break that came out earlier. I think Quantum Break would have thrived on this program, to be honest. And yeah, when you think about it, in 2018 alone, that's Sea of Thieves, Crackdown 3, State of Decay 2, the inevitable Forza game, and any surprise from E3 that's going to come out this year. And that's a pretty big deal for someone like myself who doesn't have the time to play every game. I mean, this is awesome. You also have no buyer's remorse, which I think a lot of people can relate to this. I personally can a lot. Have you ever purchased a brand new game and regretted it? You know, you spend $80 on the game, you play it for like 5-6 hours, and you just didn't feel like you got enough out of it. You feel like, I shouldn't have spent all that money on this game. Should have waited for it to go on sale. Should have tried it out at a friend's house first. Should have borrowed it for a friend. Anything like that. This happens to me all the goddamn time. Games like Star Wars Battlefront, the very first Star Wars Battlefront, I remember dropping $80 on that game, again, Canadian dollars, as soon as it came out. Didn't even buy the disc, I just downloaded it digitally because I thought, oh man, I'm going to play this thing all the time. And I probably played less than 10 hours of that game in total, which is extremely disappointing for a game that's solely multiplayer focused. I definitely feel like I didn't get enough out of that game. Even a game like Destiny, myself and Jim, who host the Mythic Music podcast, I remember we both got Destiny a while ago. Not exactly when it came out, but a little bit after it came out, and we were both excited. Actually, no, I think it must have been about half a year after it came out, because that was when the one of the major expansions came out, and it kind of brought everything together. I'm forgetting the name of it. Either way, when me and Jim were playing Destiny, I mean, when we first got into it, we probably played 5, 6, 7 hours of it together, and we were having a blast. And I probably played a couple hours solo as well, but you know, a lot of people were getting hundreds of hours out of Destiny, and I just didn't get that much time out of it at all. It just didn't hook me like it did a lot of people, and you know, that's a game I spent $70 back on. So, like, when you think about it, that's a lot of money down the drain. Now, I did buy that game on disc. I was able to trade it back in, which was nice. But imagine if I bought that digitally, like Battlefront. Or even Diablo 3, which this was a while ago. When it first came out on PC, I sprung for that instantly. And I didn't buy the disc for that game. I just downloaded it off Battle.net. And I've probably played less than 30 hours of that game total. And I actually love Diablo. I just never go back and play it. And I think that's a waste of money for me as well. And then kind of more of an Xbox exclusive, Quantum Break, which came out not last year, but the year before. It came out, it was full $80, had about a 10-hour campaign plus some like 2 hours of live show kind of wrapped in there. No multiplayer. You know, I thought it was a great game, to be honest. I love Quantum Break. It's just that I felt like after I was done with it, I'm like, damn, I really spent $80 on that. And not to discredit the quality of the game at all, but I felt like this game would have been a prime contender for the Xbox Game Pass program, where I subscribe to the program and I can just play this game and I don't have to spend $80 on it, and the developers are getting more people to play it perhaps than what was happening before. Something nice about this as well is that the game is part of your subscription, so there's no investment on your end to keep you playing. there are a lot of times when I buy a game, even when I don't like it too much, I'm going to put some hours into it just because it's like, okay, I purchased this game. I got to get something out of it. And I hinted at this before, but if you like the game so much when you're playing it in Xbox Game Pass, you can actually buy it at a discount so you own it forever, digitally anyways. I forget what the discount is. It might be 10 or 15%. But a game like, say Sea of Thieves coming out. Say you like Sea of Thieves so much when it comes out. The first month you've played it. You've played a ton of hours. You know you're going to keep on playing it. You love it, but you want to own it. You want to make sure that it doesn't disappear from the program and you don't own it anymore. Game Pass will discount that game for you, which is nice. So instead of being $80 here, it'd be, $70, which is great. So there is a way that Game Pass benefits you that way, and it does introduce a little bit of discounting for people, but again, you're playing it as part of Game Pass as well, so that's awesome. And again, I hinted at this before, but if you don't have the time to try out every new game you think looks cool, again, in terms of exclusives, Game Pass lets you try those out. And an example for me, it's Forza Motorsport 7. I already own Forza 5, Horizon 2, and Horizon 3, and when Forza 7 released this year, I thought to myself, oh man, I'd love to play that game. I love racing games. But I have all these other racing games, and I can't justify spending that money on a racing game, even though I love them. And again, if Forza 7 comes to Game Pass, which I'm not sure if it's on it already, it might already be on it, but when the next Forza game does inevitably come to Game Pass, Horizon 4, again, not announced, but that's probably what's going to happen, I'm going to play it, and I don't have to spend $80 on it, and it's something that makes me really happy because I can all of a sudden enjoy a lot more games. You also have the added benefit of adding a larger player base for multiplayer games. And these, games like Halo 5 Guardians and Gears of War 4 come to mind for me. And this will help support the communities long after launch, and it helps support game communities for a game that didn't sell as well at retail, which I think is interesting. So a game like Sunset Overdrive, for example, that is on Xbox Game Pass, I bet the online community now that since it's entered the program is much higher than what it was before, which was probably slim to none a couple years after release. And even games like Gears of War 4 and Halo 5, where the online population's never really had a problem, lots of people playing those games, it's just going to add more people to play those games, which is great. And again, that's really good for the developer. You have an increased tail, more longevity to your game. Let's get into some financial stuff. So it does increase the likelihood of economically risky games. Single-player only games like Quantum Break, for example, and even Sunset Overdrive, where there is a bit of multiplayer on there, but it's basically single-player. It also supports games with no microtransactions in the way that the developer probably has a continuous revenue stream coming from Game Pass that they will not need microtransactions to fill. And again, I'm always talking about first-party IP here, Xbox One exclusives from Microsoft Studios. And we're all unsure of the economics of Game Pass. We don't exactly know how it works, so how do devs get money from people playing their games on the program? I'm going to propose my theory here, and again, I'm no expert. I'm just a consumer who I feel like this is how they would do it at first glance. I would be very curious to know exactly what happens here, but this is what I think, so here we go. A percentage of the monthly fees goes to the developer based on playtime. So, for example, let's say 2% of Game Pass time spent in January of 2018 last month was spent on Sunset Overdrive. Full 2%. Let's just say an even 2%. Make it easy. They get 2% of total fees, subtracting a small fee for Microsoft of the total Game Pass revenue. And that small fee from Microsoft, we can call that the licensing fee, the fee to stay on the program. And let's say right now there's 1 million people subscribed to Game Pass. Again, I don't think it's 1 million right now, but let's just call it 1 million, make an easy round number here. And we're going to talk in American dollars because 10 is easier than 12. So 1 million people are subscribed to Game Pass at $10. And that's $10 million. Okay, that's $10 million in revenue that they can allocate somewhere. 10 million. And that's just for 1 month. So let's say that Sunset Overdrive, again, absorbs 2% of all playtime. 2% of 10 million is $200,000. That's a decent chunk of change. Let's say Xbox keeps 5% of the developer share as a fee for having the game on the program. So 5% of 200,000. So that's $10,000. So Xbox, out of the 200,000 that would be allocated to Sunset Overdrive, they would keep $10,000, and that's their licensing fee. And $190,000 would go to Insomniac to get the developer. I mean, let's just think about that, for example. A game like Sunset Overdrive, that I guarantee isn't having much retail sales anymore, and probably not too much digital since the game is long past, is enjoying $190,000 in this example. That's a decent chunk of change, and that's something that developers, I think that's a very attractive proposition. Let's have another example here, right? So let's talk about Sea of Thieves. So let's say at the end of 2018, Sea of Thieves eats 5% of all playtime on Xbox Game Pass, and this is something that could very well happen given the success of the game on Twitch during its closed beta and the amount of interest in this game right now. I think 5% even might be a little light. I might need to bring that up, but let's just say 5%. 5% of playtime on Xbox Game Pass in 2018 is spent on Sea of Thieves. And again, 1 million people pay for 12 months at $10. So let's say there's 1 million people subscribed to the Xbox Game Pass program at $10, or there's 1 million memberships that are spent for 12 months. Again, $10. We'll talk in American dollars because it's easier. For people who don't want to do the math or can do the math, either way. So 1 million people paying for 12 months at $10 is $120 million. It's a lot of money. 5% of that is $6 million. 5% of that is $300,000. So $300,000 would go to Xbox for the licensing fee, and $5.7 million would go to Rare, and this would again be throughout the year. So that's a significant amount of money, and mind you, games cost hundreds of $1 million to make, especially the AAA games, so that's really just a drop in the bucket. But this is in addition to traditional digital and retail revenue, which was still going to eat the lion's share of sales for years and years and years. And this is only estimating 1 million people, but if 1 million people use Game Pass for a year, there are 59 million other people who subscribe to Xbox Live Gold that can buy this game. And that's not even counting everyone who just wouldn't have Xbox Live Gold and is going to buy this game anyways. People like PC gamers. So when you think about that, that's an additional chunk of money that Rare probably wouldn't have seen. I'm not sure exactly how much retail revenue this is going to eat up. But for someone like myself who's very much thinking about subscribing to this program instead of buying these games, it's increased the likelihood of me buying them in general. There's always a chance that I'm just not going to have the money, I'm not going to have the time, I'm thinking, you know what, I'm not going to buy this game, I'm going to wait for it to go on sale, which is something I do a lot. I don't buy full price games too much anymore. I usually wait for them to go on sale. So if this game's allowing me to play them day one and I'm supporting the developer in this kind of way where its percentage of the monthly fees based on time comes back to the developer, that's great. And off the back of that example, this is just an additional revenue stream for developers on the program, especially smaller indie games where the revenue streams may be very limited. You know, games like Braid, for example, maybe even a game like Limbo or Inside, something like that, where they get on this program and all of a sudden you not only have your digital sales and your small retail sales if you have a retail presence, but you also have this Xbox Game Pass continuous revenue kind of supporting you. And this is ongoing, right? This isn't something that's going to tail off and die. This is something that, hey, if your game's good and people are playing it, you're getting money for it. And it's also another revenue stream for games without microtransactions. And again, I talked about this a little bit, but in theory, if games are on this program and generating monthly income this way, they don't need the bad press and taste of microtransactions in their games. I mean, they could always have it in there. But as somebody, let's say Halo 6 comes out, and I think Halo 6 can have microtransactions because they've talked about it, but let's just say, in theory, Halo 6 comes out, and instead of having microtransactions, they're just on Game Pass. I mean, imagine how huge that would be. Halo 6, no microtransactions, on Game Pass. That's a lot of good press. It very well could be the death of microtransactions on first-party Xbox games, which, again, this is dramatic, but it is still plausible in theory when you think about it. It's that additional revenue stream that could replace that. And at the core philosophy of this program, developers and publishers, they can save money on production costs here. You're not paying for as much manufacturing and data loading and distribution of as many physical games. You're not talking about the cases, you're not talking about the shipping of it, you're not talking about the physical discs and how many you have to order. You're saving a lot of money here, actually, and you'd be surprised the amount of money spent on distribution on games that are coming out. And of course, there's always going to be physical games, and they're always going to be out there, but digital games and Xbox Game Pass can help limit physical sales in a good way where the developer's getting more share of the money spent. So let's recap here, everything I talked about today. Xbox Game Pass, it's potentially good for gamers because if you can't afford to buy every new game every year, like myself, this is cheaper than buying 2 brand new games in a year, something that I was probably going to do, So when you think about it, that just makes sense. Why wouldn't you just subscribe to this and get all the games? You also have no buyer's remorse. If you don't like the game, you don't need to worry about it. You're not really directly spending money on that game, so it's okay. You can just stop playing it. It also lets you try out games you otherwise wouldn't have time for / don't want to invest in. A game like me for Forza Motorsport 7 last year, or maybe Horizon 4 this year, or a game even like State of Decay 2, where I might have not have tried it. It also allows for larger player bases for games that you play. So games like Halo 5, Gears of War 4, multiplayer games anyways, that traditionally maybe the community's dwindling or the player base was never that large in the first place. Xbox Game Pass is going to help boost that up. It also increases the likelihood of risky games, single player games, and new IP. Games like Sunset Overdrive, games like Quantum Break. These single player games that are awesome, and I love single player games, that in terms of retail space, developers have and publishers have said this for a while, that single player games are increasingly becoming not economically sound, which I don't 100% believe, because games like Zelda and Horizon Zero Dawn are selling millions of copies, but I digress. And you also have another revenue stream that could replace dirty microtransactions in these first-party games. This could generate a lot of good press, and a lot of gamers would, again, start playing it if they knew that there were no microtransactions in the game. And it could be good for developers in this way. And again, I'm no developer. I don't have an inside loop on this. It's really just me thinking, hey, this is how it could be good for the developer. And again, could be wrong, but this is my thoughts. You have larger player bases and bigger communities for your games, which we talked about, which is good for gamers as well. You have more security when you're developing risky games or new IP, because, hey, if you're putting on Xbox Game Pass, you're going to have this continuous revenue stream if people are playing your game. You also have a revenue stream that's continuous, like I just talked about, which is great. And then you do add another revenue stream to your games that otherwise wouldn't have one. A game like Braid or even Sunset Overdrive, years after release, and the cream comes to the top. You know, the best games will be rewarded with playtime and dollars. In my model anyways, where I think is going to happen. If your game's good and people are playing it, well, you're going to get money, which is awesome. If your game's not good, then hey, make better games, you know? So that covers Xbox Game Pass and why it can be such a big deal. I'm seriously considering this program. It's something where I can pay $144 Canadian a year, and for less than the price of 2 brand new games, I'm going to get Sea of Thieves, Crackdown 3, State of Decay 2, the next Forza game, the next Halo and Gears game whenever they come out, as well as any other first-party exclusive that's going to be revealed at E3 or any other time. There's probably going to be a couple that come out this year. To me, that just makes perfect sense. And as somebody who has increasingly less time to spend on games, it's something that makes a lot of sense for me, in that I can enjoy all the games I want to enjoy at this point and not have buyer's remorse like I talked about before. It'll be very interesting to see what comes out after this program in terms of developers talking about the economics of it. I'm very interested to hear if my theory of, hey, you get a percentage of the playtime of the monthly fees is actually true, or if it's something more of an even playing field, where maybe that's partly true, but maybe it's a more complicated formula where it's, yep, you get a percentage of the playtime. Xbox also takes a fee like I talked about, but hey, there's also this feature where you're going to get a base amount of revenue. Everyone gets, everyone shares 1% of Xbox Game Pass revenue. And that's just spread across every developer that has a game on it. Again, I doubt that happens, because there's probably games on there that don't deserve to have that revenue on it, but either way. And as somebody who's increasingly playing more PC games, this makes a lot of sense, because all of a sudden I can play games like Sea of Thieves, I can play Xbox exclusive games that are play anywhere, again, like Sea of Thieves, that are it's something I'm probably going to want to play with friends, and if I can play with them on PC or my Xbox, it just makes a lot of sense. And to me, this kind of puts the nail in the coffin for retail games. I don't see a need to buy retail games anymore now that I can own them digitally by just buying them, or I can subscribe to Xbox Game Pass and get them, and if I like it, purchase digitally out of there with a discount. To me, there's no sound reason to buy it on retail anymore now that this program exists. And that's it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you guys next time. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Mythic Pod. Please consider subscribing. You can find us on the Google Play Store as well as the Apple Podcast Store. You can also find this podcast on YouTube, as well as all of our content, including podcasts, are on our website at www.mythicunited.com. And to stay up to date on all of our content, you can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Search Mythic United, you will find us right away.